The Timberwolves suffered an embarrassing loss over the weekend to the Brooklyn Nets. There are some serious recurring issues. What those are, and could this be solved by a trade? Some Collin Sexton buzz is out there. It's all coming next.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. That's 5 to 6:30 p.m. Central Time. Happy Monday, everybody. Hope you had a fantastic weekend and are enjoying the holidays. Tonight, the Timberwolves take on the Chicago Bulls. They've had a roller coaster season. We'll talk about that matchup later. And we're going to hit a little on what happened against the Nets on Saturday. But kind of the more macro conversation around that is like, what is wrong with this team? And what's the appropriate level of sky is fallingness on the sky is falling scale? Where should we be at right now? And then also, like, with that context, there's just a few more trade rumors kind of circulating now that we're officially in trade season. We're only like 5 weeks out from the trade deadline, which is now in early February these days. So a bit of Collin Sexton buzz. So I want to hit that too. On again, like a more of a, we'll get into some specifics of what could and might not be the case in terms of potential trades for Minnesota, but more of a 30,000 foot view there. But I want to start with some of those bigger issues, and then we'll transition into how the trade deadline could or maybe won't solve it based on some of the names we're seeing floated that the Wolves potentially have interest in. So a lot to get to today. We'll close with Wolves Bulls, a bit of a preview. A big thank you off the top for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. All right. So quickly, like before the season, one of my bold predictions is that Minnesota would be 27-7 on January 1st. That obviously can't happen. They're 20-12 currently, with 2 games to go, I guess, before the first. So like, given that was a bit of a bold prediction, but also if you look at the Timberwolves schedule, the strength of schedule to this point hasn't been that crazy. They haven't had a back-to-back since November. They played a lot of really winnable games. And on the one hand, they haven't lost to too many bad teams, which I know sounds like, we're just like patting them on the head, like, okay, not too bad. But like that does matter. I mean, the Nets loss is obviously fresh, and we're going to talk about that. But like a couple of close Phoenix losses, the Memphis loss was obviously really bad. And I guess you could say, OT against Sacramento was bad. A couple of those are kind of, combated by the win over OKC. They got a win over a Knicks, albeit a shorthanded Knicks team, but from a schedule standpoint, that's not one that should have been an easy win necessarily. So, yeah, there's been more bad losses than impressive wins. There's no doubt about that. But like grand scheme of things, I mean, on the same day the Wolves lost to the Nets, you had the Spurs losing to Utah, and there was another good team that lost to a bad team. Like that stuff happens. The concern is more the manner in which some of these losses are taking place and some of the recurring issues. And I think it's more about like, it's funny because the finger pointing is such a tough game, like the blame game. What percent blame are we going to assign to Chris Finch versus Tim Conley versus the players themselves, right? Everybody, when there's issues like this, and of course, Ann had some concerning comments after the game on Saturday about, I guess this is Timberwolves basketball, meaning the fans are booing and we're playing in a disappointing way. I guess that's Wolves basketball. Yeah, that's not great. But on the scale, where are we assigning this blame? Is it on the coaches for not being prepared? Well, the players have said they're prepared. They don't know why they're not performing. Is it on the coaches for not motivating the players? Well, how much motivation should there need to be to a team of professionals and largely veteran players? Is it on the roster building? I'm starting to come down on the side more of the roster building because, and not necessarily the process, but where they ended the process, right? Like the idea of trading up for Rob Dillingham wasn't a bad idea because they needed to find a way to add more playmaking, and it was not going to be feasible to do it through free agency or even through trade without giving up somebody who they really liked, like a Jaden McDaniels or a Naz Reid, right? We could quibble about letting Nickeil Alexander-Walker walk and keeping Naz Reid and keeping Julius Randle and losing Alexander Walker, who's perhaps the front runner for Sixth Man of the Year right now in Atlanta. But I don't know that that was the wrong process. Now, the Dillingham thing, going back to that, I mean, is some of that on the coaching? Yeah, probably. You got to develop guys. Now, we're still only a season and a third into the guy's career. So there obviously is still upside there. But the question is, how much of this are you willing to stomach when you're supposed to be a finals contender? And honestly, where I'm going to come down on this here is I think he's got to play more. And here's the thing. All along, if you've listened to the show, I have said I get why they're not playing Rob Dillingham because he hasn't been good when he plays. I get why they're not playing him because the offense is better when Mike Conley's on the floor, because Naz Reid's got to play, because TJ Shannon's got to play. Well, guess what? We're at a point now, it's not quite break glass in case of emergency, but you got to know what you have before you get to trade season. TJ Shannon's out for at least 2 weeks with the foot injury. He's already been in and out of the lineup, so he's gone. Mike Conley got his first DNP CD ever with the Timberwolves on Saturday. So he's not in the rotation, apparently. And Rob played, 11 minutes against the Nets? I think you just got to go full Rob Dillingham and see what happens. I truly believe that. You have to know what you have in Rob Dillingham before you enter the trade season. And the numbers would back this up to an extent. Now, they're limited numbers, but Rob Dillingham and Anthony Edwards together have been a net positive this year when they're on the floor together. The weird part is it's not offensively. Lineups with Anthony Edwards and Rob Dillingham on the floor together are horrible offensively. They're a 0 percentile offense, 98.6 points per 100 possessions, but the defense has been phenomenal. Explain that one to me. I don't know. I don't get it. It doesn't make sense. Now, many of those lineups, of course, also have Rudy Gobert, so that's a big reason why. But this, one of the lineups that's tied for the most used with Ant and Rob together, granted, it's only 23 possessions, but it's got Julius Randle and Naz Reid on the floor together, which is a whole other conversation. Those guys, those minutes without Rudy on the floor, the other two bigs have been horrific. But the point being, the sample's really small, but the overall results are a plus 4.2. And again, just 139 possessions of Ant and Dillingham together. But you got to know what you have. And we'll talk in a little bit about Collin Sexton and like what he's done next to LaMelo Ball in Charlotte. It's obviously not the same thing. LaMelo Ball and Anthony Edwards are very different players, but could Collin Sexton play next to another ball dominant guard like an Anthony Edwards, like he's been playing with LaMelo Ball? We could talk about that. But again, like related, what's Rob and Ant look like together? What does that duo look like together? Support them by having Rudy Gobert on the floor. Support them maybe even by putting Jalen Clark on the floor with them and putting Ant at the three effectively. I guess Clark would more play the three offensively. There's been relatively limited minutes of that trio together, and it mostly hasn't been good. Not relatively little, very little minutes together. But I think it's worth the shot because the defense will be phenomenal. And then maybe you put it like try a Dillingham, Ant, Jalen Clark, Gobert, and Randle team, right? Because the defense should be phenomenal. You've got Gobert and Clark on the floor together. The offense has three capable offensive players, and capable is a light word here, but Anthony Edwards, Julius Randle, and Rob Dillingham. Like, more minutes for that lineup. See what happens. You just need to know what you have in Rob Dillingham for a couple of reasons. One, do you trade him? Do you need to acquire somebody else to fill what he's supposed to be doing in terms of that secondary creator role or the guy who can score this side of Ant? And also, like, whether or not Dillingham gets traded in a move like this, if you're making a move, it's because Dillingham hasn't carried his weight. That's why you're doing it. Like, if you end up trading Conley and somebody else and whatever, and Dillingham's not included, or maybe it's an even bigger trade, and I don't think they'll do this, but they trade Jaden McDaniels and Dillingham's not involved. Like, the point isn't he's going to get traded. The point is you're replacing that role. And so they need to have a sense for what they have. And alongside some of the other ongoing issues, and these are things that, like, the Conley Ant pairing has been really bad. And we've talked about that before, but Conley and Ant together on the floor, we know Naz and Randle together have been bad. We've talked about that a bunch. But Mike Conley's on-off stuff has not been good lately. And it started the year strong, and there's so much noise in those things. But, like, no matter how you slice it, Mike Conley's dragging down some of these lineups. And so it makes sense he's not playing. But now that's another reason why if you don't have Conley, you don't have Shannon, who's going to play? It's got to be Rob Dillingham. And there's some other issues, like the free throw shooting has been really bad. And that was another thing that was amplified in the Nets game. Obviously, it ended up not being that close, but that was a problem along the way in that game. It's just like, you got to know what you have. And the very limited snapshot we've seen of Dillingham and Ant together tells me that we need to see more of that. And it could be horrible, sure. But then you could go full on break glass in case of emergency, because it will be a 5-alarm fire. If you get to February 1 and this team's a 500 team or whatever, because they were terrible in January, then yeah, do whatever you got to do to figure this thing out around Anthony Edwards and probably around Jaden McDaniels and whatever's left of Rudy Gobert. Right? Like, it has to be a retool at that point, but you got to get there first and feel confident in whatever decision it is you're making once you get to the trade deadline. And this is my time to call for Rob Dillingham, because I haven't all along, because there was evidence to suggest they're better with Mike Conley. They're better, Dillingham hasn't played well. That's all still true, except for the being better with Mike Conley thing. But in addition to Conley struggling, you have the Shannon injury and you have this team losing games they shouldn't lose. And the limited evidence of Dillingham being pretty good with Anthony Edwards, let's give it a shot. Let's see what that looks like. Related, we got to talk about Collin Sexton. That rumor came out again last week. It was mentioned that he was somebody the Wolves are interested in. So I want to talk about that, and also the context of some of the other players that have been mentioned as point guard type players, combo guard type players the Wolves could have interest in as we draw closer to the February trade deadline. We'll do all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our title sponsors at FanDuel. Fridays always feel different during basketball season. And guess what? Now FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern, that's 5 to 6:30 Central. They're appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. Open the FanDuel app during Happy Hour. We'll bring something new. Boosts, bonuses, surprises. It's easy to check the weekly special before tip-off and make a move before the window closes. The timing is perfect. It's right before the games, and yes, right before your weekend starts. It adds extra energy to Friday night basketball without overthinking it. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour. It's every Friday from 6 to 7:30 Eastern or 5 to 6:30 Central Time. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Big thank you once again for making Locked On Wolves your first listen of the day. And of course, thanks for helping to make Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. We could not do it without each and every one of you. If you haven't already, go check out the new Everydayer Club. You can get access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Wolves, compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. Plus, you get an invite to the members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat just for listeners of this show. You can head to lockedonwolves.supercast.com. That's lockedonwolves.supercast.com, or tap the link in the show notes to learn more. All right. Let's talk about Collin Sexton. So this rumor came out once again. It's not the first time we've seen it, but Jake Fisher mentioned it just before Christmas last week. It was like midweek that the Wolves are interested, and Minnesota's trying to get a sense of the different options that they have on the point guard market, and we'll get into that here in just a minute. What would Collin Sexton add? To refresh, he had signed that sign and trade with Cleveland going to Utah 4 years ago now, and spent 3 years in Utah for a team that was not necessarily trying to win, never averaged more than 28 minutes a game for the Jazz, which, is too bad during essentially the prime physical years of his career. And this year with Charlotte, there's a little bit of the same, where he started the year in the starting lineup. He's now not starting for them. He's only averaging just under 25 minutes a game, which is second lowest of his career, next to his first year in Utah when he had some injuries. And he's still dealt with injuries. He's only played in more than 65 games once since his rookie season. That was 2 years ago in Utah. He played in 78 games. His rookie year, he played in all 82 games. And he still just, he still just keeps scoring. He's shooting 40% from three this year. He was over 40% last year in Utah. For the last, he had a couple bad shooting seasons early in his career. Over the last 4 seasons, he's at 39.8. So effectively a 40% three-point shooter. And this year he's only 15 a game points wise, but he's also not starting for Charlotte. He was over 18 a game each of the last 2 games in Utah as basically their primary scorer. What does he bring to the table? Well, he's not really a true point guard. He's more of a combo guard. And he would bring a lot of shooting. That's number one. He brings some creation. He can facilitate for others. He could be a secondary ball handler. Him and Ant can play off of each other. He would absolutely bring offensive punch. And I think he's a good passer for somebody who's not necessarily a pass-first guard. And he's not. The turnover rate's a little higher than you'd like it to be each of the last couple of years. But again, he's been on bad teams, being asked to do too much. And I think there's still some upside. He's only age 27. Now, this is the final year of his contract. Well, actually, set that aside. We'll get to that here in a second. He doesn't help you defensively. I should point that out. He's not a good defender, and maybe this is a case where challenged on a good team, perhaps he tries harder on the defensive end, but that would worry me a little bit, especially given, like, he's not a big dude for a combo. Like, he's listed at 6'3". He's a combo guard. He's not Ant's size. He's not, he's more of like a Jalen Clark-ish sized guy. So you're concerned a little bit about the defense. He also doesn't really help you in terms of drawing fouls. Like, he does get to the line a little bit, but like his free throw rate would slot right in behind. It'd be behind Randle, behind Ant, behind Rudy. This year it's a little bit higher, but I think in general he helps you a little there, but not dramatically. So it's really, he'd be more of a catch and shoot and create off the dribble a little bit type guy, but he's not going to get to the line a ton. And again, doesn't help you defensively. So this is the last year of his contract. Which is the trickiest part about the whole thing, is like you'd basically have to agree to do to give him an extension, which he is extension eligible, and you can do that. He's getting paid just under $19 million this year. So to match the salaries, like, it's feasible. I mean, you could do it, but what's the right amount to give up to a guy that you're going to hand an extension as he heads into the meat of his prime? What's the ceiling for Collin Sexton? Is he just like a nice third player on a really good team? Or can he legit step up and be the third player in a championship team, or even surpass Randle as the second best player when he's given more responsibility? I worry a little bit about the style of play offensively for both Sexton and Ant, and like how they split those reps, essentially, how the usage rate gets divided up. I think it could work, but I in a perfect world, it's a bigger guard. To pair a smaller guard with Ant, and now obviously Dillingham smaller, and like, the bigger thing is that they can score. So I think it could work, but I'd love for them to be either bigger or a better defender. And handing Collin Sexton a contract extension makes me a little bit nervous. I mean, you could do the trade by giving up Rob Dillingham and Mike Conley, and then one more guy, and then you'd need to take somebody back from Charlotte just from a roster size standpoint. So, like, call it Mason. Like, I don't know that it's Mason Plumlee, but call it Mason Plumlee and Collin Sexton. And the Wolves give up Conley, Dillingham, and then, either TJ Shannon or Leonard Miller or somebody that helps you get to that dollar amount that you need to make the trade. But that would work. I mean, you could do it. It's actually easier than a lot of these other trades that we've talked about. And honestly, like, the thing, if there was like another year left on the deal, like if Sexton had a year after this one, I would say pull the trigger, because Collin Sexton would make this team better right now. The concern is, what's the ceiling? Is he always going to be an offense, no defense guy who only gets marginally better? But it makes you better this year. But if you had another year to make the decision on the extension, the problem is you're going to have to make that decision this year. And now you're kind of sort of locked into that. So at the moment, there's only so much flexibility Minnesota has. If they don't want to trade McDaniels, and they're obviously not trading Ant, they're probably not trading Gobert. I mean, you could trade Julius Randle. You could trade Reid, but that's kind of it, outside of Rob Dillingham and Conley's expiring. So there's limited optionality here. And as soon as you trade for a Collin Sexton and extend him, that optionality becomes even more limited, because now you've traded Mike Conley and potentially probably Rob Dillingham in this scenario. And your next pivot would have to be a major pivot. So I guess this would be one more opportunity to tweak without making a complete overhaul. And I say that it would still be a big move to add somebody like Sexton and give him a contract. But in this scenario, you're not giving up any big rotation guys. Now, you'd have to include something else to get Sexton. Like, obviously, I should say, like, there's got to be that pick swap in there, second round pick, whatever, maybe even a third team. Like, they're not going to just trade Sexton for Conley, Dillingham, and Shannon, I don't think. That said, I don't think Charlotte wants to give Sexton an extension, right? So So they're going to be motivated to move him. The question is could they get more from somebody else? And sitting here right now, that would be kind of the thing is I bet somebody else could pony up more than a pick swap, Rob Dillingham, and an expiring Mike Conley. So I don't, I would worry more about that than like, is the move the right move? Because I think it is. The extension makes me a little nervous, and I'm trying not to overreact to the recency bias of the Nets game on Saturday, but like he adds shooting, he adds offensive punch. It fits the timeline of Ant if you're concerned about that. The problem is the extension. Now, the other options we talked about, Darius Garland is a couple more years on his deal, and I don't like him as much as Sexton. I worry about, I mean, they both had some durability issues, but I think Sexton's was more due to the teams he was on than and their motivations. Darius Garland's been on a good team and hasn't been able to stay on the floor. Kobe White also would have to give him an extension, and I think right now I actually like the fit better with Kobe White than I do with Collin Sexton. But I think the upside of Collin Sexton is perhaps a little bit higher. And so depending on what you think the extension would be for each of those guys and the price would be, that's close in my mind. And perhaps we'll do that comparison another day, is comparing Kobe White's fit to Collin Sexton's. I slightly prefer Kobe White, but I also think he may not be quite as expensive as Collin Sexton. I could be wrong about that. And then, of course, there's the nuclear option, which is James Harden. And I don't want to get into that today. But that's been out there, right? Like that was a rumor that was mentioned. I think it was Mark Stein, formerly of ESPN, who has his own Substack now, who mentioned it. I don't think that happens. That would truly be a nuclear option because you'd have to give up a bunch to match that salary. And now you're in the James Harden business for likely the next year and a half because he's got a player option for next year. And at age 38 or whatever, he's not opting out. So, yeah, I mean, like that would be the nuclear option. And again, that's a conversation for another day. So perhaps, tonight, We'll do the post-game pod tomorrow from Wolves Bulls. So maybe Wednesday we'll get into the trade question of Garland or Kobe White, or really Sexton or Kobe White, James Harden. We'll kind of weigh all those things and kind of take a step back and see, as we're officially in the Wolves need to do something mode right now. So we'll break all that down later in the week. Next year, though, on today's show, we're going to talk Wolves Bulls tonight. Haven't seen the Bulls yet this year. We'll break that all down here next. All right. Timberwolves Bulls tonight. We have not seen the Chicago Bulls yet this year, and the Bulls have had quite the roller coaster of a season. They started the year 5-0. Nobody was expecting it. 5-0, 6-1, and then they fell to 6-6. They quickly lost 5 straight. Then they were 9-14. They lost a bunch of games in a row. The sky was falling there, just as everyone kind of expected them to have a bad year. And then they go out and win 6 of 7 in 5 straight, and they're back to 500. And then they just lost to the Bucks in Giannis's return on Saturday. There were some fireworks there when Giannis dunked late, that whole thing. So now they're back a game under 500, but it's really been a tale of 4 seasons, right? The 5-game winning streak to start the year, a 5-game losing streak, then a 7-game losing streak, and then a 5-game winning streak. And now they're just a game below 500. A very hard team to figure out. I actually took the over on them before the season, and I've alternatingly felt really smart and really dumb about that. I thought they would be a, I don't know, 40-ish win team this year. And I guess that's kind of what they're on pace for at this point. Not kind of, almost exactly. They're bottom third essentially in both. They're 19th in offense on cleaning the glass, 21st in defense. They've shot the ball well, and they don't really turn it over that much. And that's what's helped them offensively. I also think, well, I mean, we've talked about Kobe White. Like, that's a player that I really like, and I'm interested to watch him against Minnesota. But from a pace standpoint, they're the second fastest pace in the league. And that has been one of the ways that they've gotten some of these really efficient shots, and it shot the ball so well on the offensive end of the floor. They've had some injuries. They've got Josh Giddey is likely going to play in this game, but he's been banged up a little bit. Zach Collins is not going to play in this game, and Zach Collins hasn't played a whole lot for them this year. That's kind of been the story of his career, unfortunately. But Josh Giddey's probable, so expect him to play, but he's dinged up a little. Vucevic has played well for them. Kobe White has played well since he came back from injury, and I think that's a big part of what's kind of helped them to this 6 out of the last 7 wins up until the loss against Milwaukee on Saturday. what to look out for from a Minnesota standpoint, I think it's, well, they defend without fouling really well, and they rebound and go really well. They rip down defensive boards and they run. That is something that Minnesota has struggled with this year because, well, the Timberwolves have played faster at times. They aren't great at getting back in transition. That's been a consistent problem, and Chicago would be more than happy to just rip down a defensive board and take off running. They're going to have every opportunity to do that against the Wolves, and that would be my primary concern. They're not a big offensive rebounding team, but they're a good defensive rebounding team, and they play fast. Coby White likes to push the pace. He hasn't shot the ball well from three, but between him and Josh Giddey, just, Vucevic gets the board. Giddey gets a billion offensive boards a game too, or defensive boards, I should say, a game between Giddey and Vucevic. And then it's Giddey and White that are pushing the pace. I had Sunmu. I've always liked him. He shot 44% from three for them this year. There's pieces on this team, excuse me, that are really good and really dangerous. And that, like, I don't love the matchup for Minnesota because they can be physical on the defensive glass and can push the pace. And there's enough shooting with this team. They're 11th in 3-point percentage on the year, and they're 13th in 3-point rate. Like, Giddey's actually shooting the three. Remember when he played for the Thunder and the Timberwolves intentionally would leave him open? I mean, they weren't the only team that did this, but they would just not guard him, and they would have Rudy on him, and Rudy would patrol the paint essentially. Well, Giddey's averaging almost 20 points a game and shooting 39% from three this year. Coby White's actually only 32%. It's smaller volume because he missed, over a dozen games early in the season. But like Sunmu at 44%, Kevin Huerter's actually not shot the ball well for them this year. He's only 32% for deep, but Isaac Okoro shot 39% unlimited volume in a starting role for them. I've always liked him. Patrick Williams is still a thing in their rotation at 19 minutes a game, shooting 40% from three. Like, this team has guys that can knock down open threes. They have guys that'll push the pace. They have guys that'll grab defensive boards. Their guards rebound. Like, again, Giddey is a big is big on the defensive glass. Like, he's a big part of what they do there. They've got wings that rebound the basketball. They've got big man depth. Like, there's a lot to like about this roster. In general, defense is the bigger concern for them, and it has been this year. Like, they've been a bottom third defense all season. But then again, Minnesota's offense hasn't exactly been anything to write home about. I mean, like, look at the Nets game on Saturday, right? And the Bulls defend without fouling, so perhaps free throw shooting won't be as big of a deal in this one for Minnesota, but that continues to be a recent bugaboo for them. I'd look for the fast break opportunities for Chicago. I'd look for that, and then the quality of the three-point looks they get would be my concern. So get back defensively if you're Minnesota and contest the three. Be ready for three-point attempts in transition. Get out, contest at the 3-point line. Those would be my keys if you're Minnesota. I'm a little worried about this game, honestly, especially coming off of Saturday's game. I have some concerns about Minnesota's ability to defend Chicago. And as of right now, the Wolves are 6.5-point favorites on the road in Chicago. But again, I'm worried about it. We'll have the post-game pod tomorrow. Live postcast tonight, of course, Jack and Luke on Locked On Wolves on YouTube Live, and then also the audio feed right here as well. And then I'll be back tomorrow with the post-game podcast to talk Wolves Bulls. Later in the week, we'll talk some trade stuff again. And then, of course, the Wolves also have a New Year's Day matinee. New Year's Day? No, New Year's Eve matinee. I think it's a New Year's Eve matinee. Yeah, that would make more sense. New Year's Eve matinee for the Wolves is at Atlanta. So on Wednesday, New Year's Eve at 2 p.m., the Timberwolves take on the Hawks, and then they're off Thursday and Friday. Don't play again until Saturday. So I'll probably save, since we got the matinee Wednesday, I'll probably save the trade talk for Friday's show, Friday, January 2nd, to talk a little bit more, dig in on some of the trade possibilities as we get into the weekend. Big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. A reminder to join the Everydayer Club if you need a last-minute gift still for the holidays, or maybe someone keeps asking, hey, is there anything you wanted for the holidays this year? Make it easy. Ask for the Everydayer Club. Ad-free episodes of this show, exclusive Discord server access, and more. Subscriptions can be gifted through lockedonwolves.supercast.com. Big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen. Of course, part of that very same Locked On Podcast Network, your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.